Tongues are wagging as to why we are still experiencing rains in January, as some parts of Cameroon are still witnessing heavy rains in the country in the month of January. At the same time, the population of Japan is still in grief and mourning the persons that lost their lives in the earthquake that happened in the first week of January, exactly starting on the 1st of January when the world was celebrating New Year. And at the same time, there's still questions on the air, and of course, we are still living off the fever of COP28. For it has been barely weeks after COP28 finished, and we are still asking the questions, hoping that the resolutions of COP28 will be implemented. There is so much to talk about in the environmental sphere, and that is why we are here to talk about these issues, to get you informed and of course make you aware about some environmental happenings, problems that are plaguing our society today. And that is why this program Nature's Corner comes up every Thursday from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. right here on the airwaves of High Television, presented by me, the one and only JABI, KATY. And in as much as we shall be talking about other environmental trends and happenings, one thing is of peculiar interest on the show today, as we are looking at how to conserve the environment, at the same time reduce poverty. We're talking about environmental conservation vis-a-vis poverty reduction. What are some of the things in which we are doing as community members that is increasing the poverty line? At the same time, how is poverty in the country going as much as far to increase environmental degradation? All of these and more we shall be discussing. And when I talk about we, I mean I and my guest, a very smart young man I have with me right here in the studio. But of course, you get to see him just after this jingle break. My name is JABI, KATY, and when we come back from this jingle break, we dive in straight to the environmental happenings and of course properly unveil our topic and guest for today. Dear viewers, welcome back to the airwaves of High Television. My name is JABI, KATY, and I'm currently coordinating the program Nature's Corner. If you're just tuning in, do not worry. You've not missed quite a lot because we are just getting started. Yes, the program Nature's Corner comes on the airwaves of High Television every Thursday as from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. where we discuss environmental issues. We are all about ensuring that we have an environmental conscious population. We tell you what is happening within the environment, no matter which part of the world. We tell you what you can do to stop what is happening, what all of us can do to prevent and avoid some of these or adapt to some of these challenges that we are facing. And of course, today, as earlier mentioned, we're talking about poverty reduction vis-a-vis environmental conservation. How can we as conservationists, how can we as community members do well to conserve the environment, at the same time increase the poverty line, at the same time fight towards economic growth? But just before we do all of that, let's give you info as to some of the things that are happening in Cameroon and the globe at large when it concerns the environment. So straight away yesterday, after a tedious day, I went to the house and speaking to a friend, and he called me and said, I had a very terrible day today because I witnessed rainfall. There was rainfall in Limbe and I got completely soaked, and he was wondering what is happening that we are still witnessing heavy rainfalls in the month of January. And it may not just be Limbe, I'm guessing the other parts of the country may be witnessing rainfalls. And of course, some will say that we need this rainfall to water the crops of farmers, but when it becomes persistent and consistent, is it really a matter of watering the plants or the crops of farmers, or is it a problem we should be concerned about? Because right from the month of December, November, December, January, we have been witnessing unusual rainfalls, which brings about the topic of climate change that we speak about every day, which makes to us that tells us that climate change is real, and it is just a change, a shift of weather patterns, that in the days in which we're supposed to witness warm weather conditions, we are instead witnessing rainfalls and colder weather conditions. And on the days in which we're supposed to witness colder weather conditions, we are witnessing the opposite. And we experience this almost every day, almost every year. And of course, the weather patterns are changing, and it is a point of concern when we talk about climate change. From Limbe, we take you now to the country Japan, where so much has happened in the country of Japan just within the past few weeks. And of course, on January 1st, 2024, when the world was celebrating New Year, the start of the New Year 2024, a powerful earthquake struck in the city of Japan, on central Japan, on Monday, 1st January 2024. And of course, this has caused lots of devastations and lots of lives, destruction of properties, and many more right there in Japan. While the world was celebrating the start of the new year, Japan was in mourning and in grief as a powerful earthquake struck central Japan on Monday, killing several persons, destroying buildings, knocking out parts to tens of thousands of homes, and prompting residents in some coastal areas to flee to higher ground. The quake, with a preliminary magnitude of 7.6, triggered waves of about 1 meter along Japan's west coast and neighboring South Korea. It is said to be the strongest earthquake in the country in more than 4 decades, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. And of course, houses were destroyed, fires broke out, and army personnel were dispatched to help with rescue operations, said the government spokesman Yoshimasa Hayashi, who told reporters, who gave reporters this information. And of course, when we watched, the local media in Japan showed footages of building collapsing into rumbles of dust right there in the central Japan. And of course, they have recorded about 213 fatalities, more than 200 deaths, and of course, with several persons injured, about 62 persons injured. And that's what we have as concern to Japan, and we want to extend our condolences to Japan. We hope that the souls of the faithful departed rest in peace, and we also hope that the Lord sees them through these trying times. And of course, just to note that Japan is the country starting the year with such disastrous environmental news. But all over 2023, we've had several of such occurrences, with Cameroon right here being a glaring example. We talk about the Bankolo incident, we talk about the Boyatown flood, we talk about the Limbe landslides, and even cases of Kenya, Ghana, South Sudan that has been witnessing several floods, a point of concern for us all. And lastly, on our list of environmental news today, we talk about COP28, which rounded up in Dubai this December. Of course, we are just renewing these resolutions to you, so you can be aware of some of the resolutions that went on in COP28, where about more than 85,000 participants from over 200 countries met in Dubai to discuss some environmental concerns. Of course, an event held by the United Nations. These are some of the key resolutions that took place there, or that were held or decided at COP28. The first resolution, or one of the resolutions, being that to help countries strengthen resilience to the effects of climate change, to help countries adapt more to climate change. That when things like, or when incidents like the Bankolo incident, when they do occur, we can adapt to it properly. And this is what was called the Loss and Damage Fund, which was adopted on the very first day of COP28. And of course, commitment towards the fund started right there in COP28, with over 700 million US dollars pledged from countries. Another resolution of COP28 was increasing climate finance, something which most African youths clamored for a lot during COP28, asking for climate finance. If we have to fight climate change, of course, we need the finance to fight climate change. And of course, that particular resolution had pledges of about 12.8 billion from 31 countries, and of course, with further contributions accepted. Another major resolution of COP28 was the withdrawal from fossil fuel and the adoption or much more adoption of renewable energy. Of course, we shall be highlighting this part too subsequently in the program, where hopefully our guests shall throw more light on it. And I think one of the last resolutions that I have here with me was the global framework on adaptation, which was to help countries identify how to build a resilient future, and also how to access country effort. These are some of the things we want to let you know about, things that are going on in the environment in the globe. And what about now? We take a jingle break. When we come back, we unveil to you our guest and our topic for conversation today. He has been with us in the studio since 3 p.m. Of course, listening to this environmental news just as you are listening right now. And he has been itching as well to dish out to you whatever thing he has kept right from the day I called him and invited him to be a guest on this program. He has been here before, so if you're a fervent follower of the program, then surely you must have seen his face. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, the program Nature's Corner is still on right here over High Television. And today our topic of conversation is environmental conservation vis-a-vis poverty reduction. How to reconcile both. Environmental conservation vis-a-vis poverty reduction. How to reconcile both. And the person I have with me as guest to discuss this topic is a very strong and smart social activist, a very strong environmentalist. He's a social engineer, a sustainable development actor who has been into environmental protection and conservation since 2016. He is the founder of Better Earth, an NGO here in Boya that seeks to protect the environment. I'm talking about the one and only Mr. Yamba Jesse. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Yamba.
Thanks, Jabi, and hi, televiewers. It's a pleasure to be here again to discuss about our world, about our kingdom, about our environment.
Of course, yes, our environment is our world, it is our kingdom. But just before we get straight into it, I'm interested to knowing how the new year went. It was a terrible one for Japan, but we're hoping that it was a good, it was maybe a favorable one for us, for us in Cameroon. How did you spend your new year?
It wasn't bad. The fact that God made me to see 2024, I must say it was quite okay. But then there is nothing that is okay if you don't have some bits and pieces of some challenges. But then at the end of the day, these challenges do not outweigh the good things about what has happened to you. And then you must say that the new year started on a good footing.
How many chicken did you eat?
Chicken, no, I'm not a fan of chicken. I think I ate bepa banga soup.
Okay, so usually people do complain that Christmas comes every year. People say that there's poverty, there's poverty, there's poverty. Last year Christmas was way more better. This year is just how we say in the local plan, just local. Was it? Did you equally witness as hard times during this Christmas celebration?
For those of us in the southwest and northwest, it was kind of local, because almost everybody was at home because it fell on a day where people actually do not go out. But then I think that though they were at home, there were people actually still enjoyed the chickens that they prepared back at home, but they did not have the latitude to go out and visit friends and enjoy the largesse that come with New Year and Xmas. So, but then somehow back at home, people enjoyed themselves, like how COVID-19 came and kept us bound at home, and then we enjoyed just with our families.
Okay, so Mr. Yamba, every year in, year out, when these Christmas celebrations come in, or New Year celebrations come in, we cry at the time of poverty. Last year was way more better than this year. There is so much poverty. Things are hard this year. When school wants to resume, books were cheaper last year than this year. There is so much poverty. When it's 20th May to 11th February, things are so much expensive this year. There is so much poverty. Last year was better than this year. It's a recurrent phenomenon. And then one is tempted to ask, what exactly is poverty? And the things we refer to as poverty, is it really poverty? That's what I want to have an understanding with you this evening. As the guest for today, what exactly is, when we talk of poverty, what do we mean?
When you're not able to afford your basic necessity, that is what you call poverty. Because as far as the international standards are concerned, if you still live below the $2 mark, then you are poor. Imagine somebody who doesn't earn 2,000 francs a day.
Yeah.
I mean, if at the end of the month you are receiving 50,000 francs, then it means you don't earn up to 2,000 francs a day, which means therefore that you are poor. Because at the end of the day, you'll not be able to have the basic necessities that you want to get. You need to pay your school fees, you need to pay your rent, you need to have food to eat, you need to have medications and all of these. Can you actually do this comfortably with 50,000 francs? And so if you can't do this, then that is why we are looking at you being poor. So being poor is about you not being able to provide for yourself and of course access basic social services.
Okay, and that is what Mr. Yamba says to him. That is what poverty, or the general standard prescribed by international bodies as to what poverty is. And today we're looking at how to accompany the globe, Cameroon, and the world to see how we can reduce the poverty line from a particular angle, from the environmental angle, exploring some of the things we do that increases poverty in our country, Cameroon, looking at using the local examples we can have as much as possible. Mr. Yamba, you and I were discussing behind the scenes, and you were saying that there's some practices that we do, poor habits that concerns the environment, that we are not aware that it goes back to affect us, reduce the money we have, and increase the poverty in the country. You are a conservationist, an environmental protection advocate. For over the years that you have been working in this field, what are some of the poor habits that you've noticed that we as Cameroonians, and maybe at the global stage at large, do that goes as far as possible to increase poverty?
JABI, let me just ask you, when you go to the OIC market and you want to get tomatoes, how many pieces of tomatoes do they give you for 500?
I think it will vary per the season, but now they put it in this.
I'm talking about now. I mean, if you go to the market now.
Now, well, I really wouldn't count, but they put this three for 500. Three wrappers for 500.
About 3 wrappers, that doesn't meet about 50 pieces. But then there were times when you go to the market, tomatoes is flooded. I mean, everywhere you find tomatoes. When you go down to Down Beach, when you want to go and enjoy and relax, and you need to eat fresh fish. Is it very easy for you to get the fresh fish roasted for you at that moment when you get to Limbe?
I know the place is kind of nasty. Around the environment, you just see plastics and all of that everywhere. And
that makes it difficult at times for the fishermen to get the desired kind of fish they need to catch. And at the end of the day, those who come down to Limbe to enjoy themselves, at one point in time they say, hey, fish no deal, and you're asking us, this big sea like this, what is happening? Why is there no fish? I mean, you see the sea, but you can't find fish. This to tell you that there are actions that you and I are putting out there, which is affecting the way the crops are supposed to grow, the way the animals are supposed to survive. And at the end of the day, these crops don't grow well, these animals do not survive, and we can't have the animals that we want to have, we can't have the crops that we want to have, and at the end of the day, I'm hungry, what I want to eat, I can't find it. So this is to tell you that those who are responsible for making sure that there is fish on the table, the fishermen, they go into the deep sea and they don't find fish. The farmers go to the farms and they can't have their crops. This is because our actions has affected the environment. And you and I know very well that once there is high demand and supply is limited, what is the result? The prices are high. And when prices are high, people start saying, things are expensive. It's because we have spat over our head, and that has come back to hunt us.
Yes, we have spat over our head and that has come back to haunt us. Ladies and gentlemen, you're still on to the program Nature's Corner. And right here, we're discussing on how to reduce poverty in the community, handling it from the aspect of the environment, the things in which we do, poor habits that we do, that goes as far as to reduce the money in our pockets, that goes as far to increase the poverty in our community. And Mr. Yamba says we are spitting on our heads by ourselves, but I want to understand how are we doing so, Mr. Yamba. I'm sure somebody watching as well want to find out.
Okay, since the environment has both the land, the air, and the waters, as far as the land is concerned, this is about the farmers. When farmers go to their farms and they can't harvest, the crops are not there, and they will complain that this year the output is bad. What has happened? It's because some of us in our communities, instead of us carrying out good environmental practices, some of us farmers go into the farms and we burn, and when we burn, what happens to the soil? The microorganisms that are found in the soil, which are supposed to produce the nutrients for these soils, are being destroyed. There are trees that produce a lot of nutrients for the soil during decomposition. When we burn these trees, when we cut them down and burn them, at the end of the day, we are reducing the amount of nutrients that go to the soil. And there are certain farming practices where people call them the slash and burn. As you cut them, you burn. At the end of the day, the soil fertility reduces. And once the soil fertility reduces, you don't expect the crop yield to be high. The second thing is that as far as farmers are concerned, today there's a lot of chemical activities into the soil. And once farmers go about using chemicals in their soils, they are actually destroying the nutrients of that soil. And once they get into their farms and start their farming activities, the nutrients have been destroyed. Of course, fertility has reduced. One thing that is very evident these days, what I see happening all around, is that people think that since they are just consumers, they are not producers, they don't care. Yeah. And so there's a lot of dumping of waste anywhere. People just have plastics, they drink and they dump. You get, in some situations, you find out that farmers are struggling between the arable land and where they are doing the position of waste. And at the end of the day, the arable land for cultivation is limited. Once this happens, once the soil fertility reduces, without organic manure, there is no way you can have good harvest. And lastly, about the land is that once we carry out these activities of burning, we are emitting a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Yeah. And once the carbon dioxide goes into the atmosphere, they go to affect the ozone layer. This is the layer that protects the earth's surface from heavy sun rays. And once the earth is no longer protected, then you experience more of dryness than wetness. And imagine crops that need moisture for survival. At the end of the day, you don't have this moisture. At the end of the day, these crops cannot do well because you and I have carried out activities that have increased the emission of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and it has come back to affect us. And once farmers discover that the crops are not producing, the only thing they can do is to increase prices because they have spent their money and they can't harvest. And once they increase prices, at the end of the day, it is us, the consumers, who suffer from it. As far as the waterways are concerned, a lot of actions that are being carried out in the communities most of the times are not sustainable. Imagine a lot of persons today, they consume contents from plastic and then they dump these plastic bottles anyhow in the community.
Just anywhere they find themselves in.
Get into the seas and oceans. And of course, once you have these plastics in the seas and oceans, it is great danger to marine life. More often than not, the plastics are being indigested by the marine life. Fish get to swallow these plastics, and once they indigest this, there's no way they can survive and they keep dying. And that is why you find out that those who are actually doing the exploitation of the seas and oceans for fish, they will not have a good harvest. And once this doesn't happen, you discover that those women who basically are roasting fish to make a living don't have the fish. Yeah. And that is how the turnover reduces, because somebody somewhere has a. This is how some people who are not basically having the means will basically use some unorthodox kind of of to to do that kind of fishing. It's the same thing like those who don't have the means to pay for laborers to do the activities, they'll go on to the unenvironmentally kind of activities. One case in point, like I said before when I started my discussion, is about those parents who don't have the money to pay for laborers, who think that they can set fires and then the farmland is clear and then they go and work. You know, when they set fires such that the farm should be burnt, then they cannot go and till. As they do that, they are emitting a lot of stuff to the atmosphere. And when they do that, they are destroying a lot of nutrients in the soil. Bear you in mind that once this happens, the only thing that can bring them out of that kind of situation to have a good harvest is only God. You know, because once you do that, you must understand that you have killed the microorganisms in the soil. You must understand that you have emitted a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and at the end of the day, this does not favor good harvest. Okay. So you discover that because these parents are poor, they can't carry out the environmental friendly activities in farming, then they go about doing the unorthodox. And that's why you must understand that once you don't perform the right things because of poverty, at the end of the day, you are also affecting the environment. You burning, you are somehow contributing to climate change. And once this happens, you discover that in some days to come, in some weeks or months or years to come, the floods that happen in Limbe, if you are doing this in Muyuka, the flood that happen in Limbe, you discover that sometime to come, rains will be very heavy in Muyuka and it will flood your house. And you say, but this is witchcraft. It's not witchcraft. It is because whatever we do today, they come in pieces. They are piling up bit by bit by bit. Like you said in the beginning, Japan experienced this kind of
an earthquake, a serious earthquake.
I mean, these are things that happen over time, you know, and once they pile up over time, before you know it, it is the explosion. And once it explodes, you can't control it. The only thing is there's going to be loss of life, damage of property with injuries. Just because you and I did not do the right thing yesterday, and so today is affecting us.
Yes, and just to highlight that when these earthquakes and floods still happen, we are the ones to still lose our businesses. Like the Boyatown incident, Mr. Yamba, where the flood destroyed stores of people, mobile money operations, and people lost money, which goes back to affect our income level.
Of course, JABI, in fact, once there is a natural disaster, there is no way you will say, I am making money out of a natural disaster. You are losing. Because where you were doing your economic activity, it has been hampered. Maybe even if your store was not destroyed, but once it is flooded, you can't open it. You know, even if you open it, people who are supposed to come and buy, they will not be able to access your shop because your store is flooded. These are the things that happen to man, which man must take responsibility to address them now. If not, in the years to come, we are going to suffer from what we have been doing today.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Yamba. Ladies and gentlemen, you're still on to High Television. The program right now on the corridors of High Television is Nature's Corner, and we are beaming live from the foot of Mount Cameroon, from southwest capital Boya. And Mr. Yamba is all around dishing you knowledge about how to protect the environment, which in turn will still protect our money, because when these things happen to us, when the floods happens, when the landslides happens, it affects us, it affects our pockets. We have seen and witnessed it. We have testimonies to this. And of course, what about now? I'll give time for Mr. Yamba to catch his breath, and I do so as well. We'll take on this jingle break, we'll come back, and we continue the show in high spirit. After all being done and said, we need to look at the way forward from every situation that we find ourselves in. Today, we are talking about environmental conservation vis-a-vis poverty reduction. And we have been looking at the ways, I and my guest in the studio, Mr. Yamba, ways in which the poor habits that we do that leads to poverty, or that adds to our poverty crisis, the poor environmental habits that we engage in that adds to our environmental crisis, and also how they in turn affect our money, affect our income, and all of that. And right about now, we ask the question, where to go from here? Environmental conservation vis-a-vis poverty reduction. And of course, my humble guest, Mr. Yamba, I throw this question out to you. How do we reconcile these two sectors?
JABI, I think this is the responsibility of the individuals, the community stakeholders, the government. Because it is not the government that is directly taking your hands to do the crazy environmentally unfriendly kind of stuff. It is you, the individual. But then the individuals will tell you that now because the government not give me this thing, that's why we are doing like that. We don't have any choice. I mean, like what happened in Limbe when they experienced the landslide and floods, and the people told us that it's because we don't have alternative places to stay, and they need to desist away from, because like I told the man in Limbe, imagine you living here. You said the government hasn't done this. At the end of the day, if you die, who has lost the life? Daily activities. One thing is very clear with farmers. Please, if you need to farm, when they say it is a farming season, which is about now, I mean, they should be able to do their clearing. Don't burn. The slash and burn thing, people there's this belief that the ash that comes from the burning
increases the manure.
Great. But these are crazy stuff, because once you are burning, you are killing these microbes. And so it is very normal that when you clear, please make sure that you do the you till the soil and put the what you have cleared buried underneath. Because once this gets rotten or decomposes, this is how the soil becomes very much fertile. And at the end of the day, you'll be having high yields, and your neighbor will say, this man, he like juju. Now juju don't do, and so before he crops are doing better. No, but that's not it. It's because this man or woman understands the ethical principles of farming. You know, the second thing which I want to say here is about the community stakeholders. The concentrated government services. I'm talking about the regional delegations of Ministry of Agriculture and the councils. The council should be able to, of course, invest a lot of money to the councils, to the community. And so if the council can also be able to invest in that area, then the farmers will have small groups that exist in the communities, which are either formal or invest in these different primary sectors. Usually in the council or debate, how much is being put aside
for an environment.
For the environment, to improve on the farming sector. How much has been put aside? Every year you have the World Cooperatives Day, where farmers come together to showcase what they have done. How much was invested to improve farmers' activities in the region or in their community? You always hear of the Banana Plantain Festival ended. What have been done to improve the activities of farmers? I mean, are we going to? But then, one thing I must tell the farmers is that they should be able to belong to farmer unions or farmer cooperatives. Okay. Because the government will not also come there and say, Papa JABI can't take 5,000. No, they will not do that. Usually, they do these subsidy activities through farmer unions, farmer cooperatives, and all of that. So they should be able to belong to these farmer groups, so that once the government wants to support, if the council wants to support, they will identify these groups and support them. Okay. So these are the things that I think if they do, at one end for the farmers will have a lot of activities and improve or increase because of what the government has invested for the farmers, and at the end of the day, we are enjoying the benefits that you and I are supposed to enjoy, and not what
us can do on your own side and what the government can do on your own part to fight environmental conservation at the same time improve on the living condition, living standard. But now, are there other sectors we should consider passing this message across to as well?
Yes, Jabi, I was just talking about the farmers, but then we must understand that the very first thing today, the government has created a multi-sectorial committee at the central level, where a lot of different sectors come together, put up ideas together, and see how they can improve the operations of the different sectors. One thing that must happen is that there should be a lot of sensitization in the different communities that we find ourselves, because once farmers become more and more aware, they'll become more and more engaged, and once they become more and more engaged, this is how their activities are going to improve. So there must be this awareness raising at all levels. And then what also needs to happen is that farming, as health is being affected, that is how other components of life is also being affected. And so there must be this coming together by the different stakeholders at the different sectors to see how they can improve what happens to the environment, such that the result coming from that working together will improve the lives of you and I and every Cameroonian and the world at large.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Yamba, for such an insightful conversation today. And we are slowly getting to the end of the program, but not yet. We are still within the corridors of high television right about this afternoon. And Nature's Corner is the program ongoing right now, ladies and gentlemen. And today we are talking about environmental conservation vis-a-vis poverty reduction. And again, we take another jingle break. When we come back, we still stay within the line of environment and poverty, but at the same time, touch something a little bit different.